You probably looked at a monkey and thought,
Hmm?
we came from that, and if evolution is real, then why aren't monkeys turning into humans? It's one of the most common arguments against evolution. And honestly, at first glance, it sounds like a pretty good question. Because if humans evolved from monkeys, why can you still walk into a zoo and see monkeys? Shouldn't they all be turning into humans by now? Or did evolution just stop? The strange thing is that this question is based on one of the biggest misunderstandings in all of science. A misunderstanding so common that millions of people believe it, because humans didn't evolve from the monkeys you see today. In fact, those monkeys are more like your cousins than your ancestors. And once you understand why, the entire idea of evolution suddenly starts making a lot more sense. Part of the problem is this image. You've probably seen it before. A monkey slowly transforms into a caveman, the caveman becomes more upright, then eventually, a modern human appears. It looks simple, it looks logical, and it is almost completely wrong, because this picture makes evolution look like a ladder. One species turns into another, then another, then another, as if evolution has a destination, as if life is trying to become human. But evolution doesn't work like a ladder. Evolution works like a gigantic tree, a tree with millions of branches spreading in every direction. Humans are not at the top of that tree. We are just one branch, one tiny branch among millions. And monkeys? They're another branch. Imagine you have a cousin. You and your cousin share the same grandparents. But your cousin isn't slowly turning into you, and you're not slowly turning into your cousin. You both came from the same family, then your lives went in different directions. That's basically what happened with humans and monkeys. Millions of years ago, there was a species that wasn't human. And it wasn't a monkey either. It was something else. A common ancestor. Scientists don't know exactly what it looked like, but we know it existed. And at some point, that ancestral population split into different groups. Each group faced different environments, different challenges, different opportunities, and over millions of years, those groups changed in different ways. One branch eventually led to humans. Another branch led to modern monkeys. Neither group evolved from the other. Both evolved from the same ancestor. That's why asking, why aren't monkeys turning into humans, is a little bit like asking, why isn't my cousin turning into me? But here's where things get really interesting. Evolution doesn't have goals. It doesn't sit down and decide what species should become. It doesn't look at humans and think, wow, that's the final version. Evolution only cares about one thing: survival. More specifically, surviving long enough to reproduce. That's it. Nothing more. Nothing less. And that changes everything. Because humans often think evolution creates improvements. It doesn't. It creates solutions. Think about monkeys living in a rainforest. They can climb, jump, swing, find food, avoid predators, raise their young, and survive. In other words, they're already successful. Extremely successful. There is no evolutionary reward for becoming human. Why would there be? Standing upright is terrible for climbing trees. A giant brain burns enormous amounts of energy. Human babies take years to become independent. Being human is actually incredibly expensive from an evolutionary perspective. Monkeys don't need any of that. Their current design already works, so evolution leaves them alone. Not because evolution stopped, but because it doesn't need to go anywhere else. Humans evolved differently because our ancestors faced different problems. Around 6 to 7 million years ago, Africa was changing. Forests began shrinking. Grasslands expanded. And some of our ancestors found themselves spending more time on the ground. Suddenly, life became very different. Trees could no longer provide safety. Food became harder to find. Predators became easier to spot. And those new conditions rewarded new traits. Walking on two legs became useful. Seeing farther became useful. Working together became useful. Communication became useful. And eventually, larger brains became useful. Over millions of years, those pressures shaped our ancestors into something entirely new: us. But here's the important part. Those pressures happened to our ancestors, not to monkeys. Monkeys were living in different environments, facing different challenges, so they followed a different path. Imagine two students taking completely different exams. One studies mathematics, the other studies music. 10 years later, both become experts, but in totally different fields. That's evolution. Species respond to the problems in front of them, not the problems facing other species. Monkeys weren't trying to become human, they were trying to survive as monkeys, and they succeeded. Now here's something that surprises a lot of people. Humans are not the pinnacle of evolution. In fact, evolution doesn't even have a pinnacle. There is no finish line, no final boss, no ultimate life form. Nature doesn't hand out trophies. From evolution's perspective, a beetle can be just as successful as a human, sometimes even more successful. There are hundreds of thousands of beetle species alive today. Many have existed for tens of millions of years. That's not failure. That's extraordinary success. The same is true for monkeys. They've been around for tens of millions of years. Their strategy works, their bodies work, their lifestyle works, which is exactly why they're still here. The monkey is not behind you on some evolutionary ladder. It is on a completely different ladder, in a completely different building, going somewhere you will never go. And you are going somewhere it will never go. Neither of you is winning, neither of you is losing. You are both just here, which when you think about it, is the most extraordinary thing of all.